politics, and population. Economics.
Even though the U.S. is currently number one, we are at a standstill while China is rapidly moving forward. Our GDP growth rate is 2.2%, while theirs is 7.8%, and our industrial production growth rate is only 4.1%, while theirs is 13.9%. So the U.S. debt currently inhibits action from occurring. So the major recession is parallel to Britain's decline, and the Iraq and Vietnam wars are very similar to the Boer War, creating a lot of debt in the economy, and China is on the rise while we are at a standstill.
The United States spends money on things like healthcare and government pensions, which take up the majority. Well, those are the two highest percentages that they spend their money on. And whereas in China, they spend a lot of money on education, and education is really valued over there.
So for politics, America is also falling behind because we have representative government, and that means that the people do get to elect everyone, but also the people that are representing can't just do whatever they want because they have to pass a ton of voting and all different things, while in China, it's only ruled by one person with almost all the powers, so they can just get done whatever they want to get done. But in America, the Democrats and Republicans are all fighting, and everyone is having a really hard time getting anything done. So, in just one example, is the United States spends 17.6% of GDP on health, while China spends about 4.3%. So, America is focusing a lot more on moral issues rather than staying ahead of everyone else.
Another problem with the U.S. and why we're falling behind is we're spending way too much of our GDP on military spending, and like Sarah said, health issues. So we don't have our priorities straight very much.
Another thing is associated with the population of the countries. Other than the U.S. falling behind, other countries are catching up. So China, its population is increasing 6% per year for the last 10 years, and India too. And India has 36 cities with a population over 1 million. That's 4 times the number of cities with the population over 1 million of the U.S. And China has 151 more cities than the U.S. So the population contributes to the rise of the rest.
Also, the literacy rate in the U.S., even though it's at 99%, in good areas in China and in India, the literacy rate is just as high. And just like in bad areas in the U.S., the literacy rate is just as low as in China and India. And also, the United States is very diverse, so it makes it hard to cooperate with each other and agree on things. Where in China and India, it's not as diverse, so it's easier to cooperate and
We're done.
No, sorry.
Notably, China and India are industrializing, but will never surpass the United States as a superpower.
So basically, our argument is that America has a lot of superior values that China doesn't possess, such as we have really good innovation, education, quality of life, capitalism, and immigration, which is the key to success. And China has a lot of problems that they'll need to face as they industrialize that are going to slow their growth, such as the wage of workers, the money that they're going to spend to industrializing, their military, communism, poor quality of life, and pollution. And India doesn't necessarily have anything special to propel them as a world power, and so they're not really in contending as much, but that's basically it.
The problems in India are so severe that it is virtually impossible for India to surpass the U.S. The main point preventing India from rising is their rigid social structure, the caste system. This is deeply embedded in the Indian society and it makes it very difficult for change to occur. India's large population means that there are more people to feed, educate, and to find jobs for. Also, the infrastructure in India is very poor, with water and electricity not being reliable even in the best of cities. There is widespread corruption in the government, making it difficult for change. Fewer than 5% of the population is educated in college or universities. Therefore, most of those who seek higher education move to America, where the innovative economy still attracts the best students. These same factors were true 15 years ago, and therefore it is very hard to see change coming anytime soon.
The major problem with China is that its advantage is manpower, and it always has been. So one problem with industrialization is as you're industrializing, you're increasing technology that reduces the need for that many workers, and that's China's advantage. So without the manpower advantage and with industrialization, you lose all of that. And so the real balance here is between America's innovation and China's manpower. And China has recently been having some issues with manpower because they instituted the one-child policy about 30 years ago, and that has already greatly reduced the number of working-age citizens. So they have a very old population, and they don't have time to get rich before their entire population gets old. So they're already losing manpower because of that, which also means that wage inflation is going to occur because you're going to want to attract more workers because there aren't enough workers to go around. So labor costs will go up, but profit will go down.
Zakaria himself says that America's chief export is its higher education. So America's education is really really good. It's the quality of the education, not the quantity. Even though other countries like China and India graduate more people in different fields, America's field has better quality.
So, although it may seem like China and India are surpassing America in numbers, when you actually look on the individual level, the quality of life for the people in China and India is much lower than the majority of Americans. Like, the suicide rates are much higher, especially for factory workers in China. And people are living with much less food per day than even the poor in America. So that could affect their profit, because soon people will start to realize that their country is getting rich, but they aren't.
So also going along with quality of life, in China with industrialization comes major air pollution, which will also reduce the quality of life for people living in China. The United States has higher education, allowing people to get higher paying jobs, whereas in China, many people are stuck with low wage jobs, also decreasing their quality of life.
China is very different from the United States in its economics, in the sense that China has a very regulated economy versus the United States, who has a very free and open economy, which would be capitalism versus their more communistic economy. Capitalism promotes competition within the private sector, which increases innovation and will ultimately result in better and more high-quality products, which again makes the United States a technological leader globally. And some great examples of this are Lockheed Martin, Boeing, and Raytheon, who all lead in their technological fields.
Time's up.
Ask a question, starting timer now.
So you talked a lot about, well, for example, China, what's going on right now, but what will happen in the future? Because the rates won't necessarily just increase steadily like that all the way into the future for several decades.
How will they keep up their industry?
So the average for the last 10 years, increasing population was 6%. And yes, it was higher before because there were more people. I mean, there were less people and now there are more. And they were working on making more food and industrializing production. And because it has been a 6% increase over the past 10 years, as compared to, I believe it's 0.8% average for the US. Even if it slows down, there will still be a very large difference between to a percentage increase in population.
Also, in addition to the increase in population, the education is climbing. The literacy rate is right now about 92.2% and is still climbing. The percent of people in poverty decreased nearly 70% in the last 24 years, so the quality of life is getting better and better as the years go on, and people are getting more and more education.
Okay, so you said that education was very valuable there, but you failed to talk about what specifically, because education is technically better here, you failed to talk about specifically what China has as an advantage if industrialization slows, because they will not be able to pay the wage for each worker, because the wage is going to increase as they industrialize, and they will have a better quality of life and they'll need to be paid more. So what are they going to do once they lose their large population and manpower to gain money when they have factories that they're going to close down?
So, industrialization doesn't mean less manpower, it means more factories, and so it means like the same amount of manpower can be put into more factories maybe. That means more production, so it means more money.
Also, the population is not increasing, as you said before, so that isn't going to be a problem.
Well, it may not be decreasing, but it is increasing far less than other decades have. And also, the workforce last year in China decreased by 3.5 million people, just like you wrote that.
3.5 million out of 410 million in the working class of men.
Just of men.
Just men, 410.
Also, with the new technology, they don't need as many people to produce as much material.
How do you guys explain why people, like, have you ever heard of a person who immigrates to China?
I know that people from China come to the United States for education and then move back to China. So that kind of counts.
As for education, in China, teachers are held in a higher regard than in the United States. They don't have to pay taxes or anything, and the work ethic of the students is much better, and they don't segregate higher achieving students, so you don't stay in your grade level, it's based on how good you are. And some negative things about the US is they have the same amount of time in China as they do in the United States as at the end of school, except there's much less engaged time in the United States. So they're not doing much.
In China, kids commit suicide because of something called the Gaokao, which is the college entrance exam. And in China, it's all about you getting the grade. It's not about how you get to an answer, which is what makes American education so much superior. So,
And with all that being said, even though people saying that China is going to surpass the U.S., the innovations are happening in the U.S., and even though China is industrializing, they only can go so far without depending on the ideas from the United States.
If you look at military technology development, we have 5,113 nuclear warheads versus only 240 in China. We also have 11 aircraft carriers versus one that's in China. Some of China's most advanced military technology is the WJ-10 and WJ-19 stealth attack helicopters. Well, we have the air and missile defense radar system that can scan uses digital beamforming to scan large mile radii for incoming projectiles and enhance measurement and position tracking for nuclear weapons. We have ballistic missiles that are capable of intercepting any nuclear weapon in orbit. And an important aspect of technology is the military power, because having a good military stronghold is an important part about being a superpower.
The United States spends 4.7% of their GDP on military, and that is definitely arguably too much. And also, they owe, out of all their debt, the United States owes most of their debt to China. So with all this debt, they aren't going to be able to, they owe to China. China would be able to pay for all of this military power, and the United States already owes China, so they wouldn't be able to use that against them.
Okay, well, you say that they're spending too much on military power, but as we learned in class, military power relates directly to how much power they have in the global scale. So even if you're saying that, oh, we spend too much money on military power, we're not going to fall as a superpower because we're still going to have our military. It's not like our military and all our weapons are just going to disappear overnight. So even though you may argue that we're spending too much, it's not like this, like we're still having a superpower status because of our military. So, like, how do you argue about that?
You pay for your military with China's money. So if we were to cut you off, where would you get your money from for military spending?
Well, they still have nuclear weapons. Our nuclear weapons aren't going to disappear overnight.
Yeah.
China can pay for more nuclear weapons because they are not in debt like the United States is. And the United States cannot without China.
Also, China being a communist country, what else is communist? Soviet Union, which has a really good nuclear weapon source, and unlike the United States, China has a limited source of soldiers. The United States is composed of immigrants and a lot of different diverse populations, so I don't think they're all going to fight for the United States if they're going against China.
Also, the mentality in China allows them to work as a community instead of so much individualism, so people can more work together and come together as an army rather than people refusing to go to war.
Even though China can afford more nuclear weapons, the thing is with our good education, we have the idea of innovation. Like, 'cause even though currently China's leading in probably manufacturing and industrialization, with our capitalist system of having companies, we are able to produce a larger variety and be more innovative in terms of what military weapons can be produced.
Like I said before, people from China can go to the United States to get educated. So we can learn from your innovation and capitalism to enhance our ideas. In the military.
What does that say, about having higher education in the U.S. if immigrants feel the need to come over to the U.S. to get higher education, even if they go back, they still came over because it's the stronger and it will be able to better their life.
Also, you compared the military of China to the military of Soviet Union, and there is no Soviet Union anymore. They fell last time I checked, so...
When you think about it, innovation happens in the US. Like, we had the idea for the iPhone and they just make it. More money is being made by it being thought of than it being made.
Apple created about 850,000 jobs in China, actually. So, actually China, because of the amount of people, their workforce actually, the inventions from America actually benefit China a great deal.
Time.
2, 1.
Happy New Year's!
Okay, so Achin said that there were many people unemployed in India, and although that is true, they have a larger population to supply jobs to, and the percentage of unemployment in India is lower than in the US. And there are more people with jobs in India.
So, there is a difference between an unemployment rate and how many people are underemployed. A lot of people in India are probably working, but are working at a lower level than if they had higher education in America. In America, you have more people having high-paying jobs like scientists and lawyers and those kind of jobs and doctors, and they're higher quality than they are in India. So in India, you may have a lower unemployment rate, but you have a higher underemployment rate.
Do you have a statistic that proves that?
Well, mathematically speaking, if you look at the ratio, I mean, you can increase the number of any sort of measurement and you're going to obtain a more exact answer. So technically, mathematically speaking, it would make sense since they have a larger population that they have a seemingly smaller unemployment rate.
Also, as China and India begin to industrialize more and more, the amount of jobs provided from manpower is going to decrease because the machinery will take over, thus putting even more people out of work.
Industrialization increases the amount of product for the number of people. So if we can make more factories for the number of people we have, we'll get more product and we still have more people.
Even though there are more microprocessors being produced in countries where they have cheap manual labor, United States has the most advanced models, and because we're constantly innovating and thinking of new ones, and this is what creates our industry and propels it forward. Because as far as I know, United States is still one of the biggest industries, even though it is in decline slightly.
India and China have more raw materials in their countries, and China owns, I believe it's 90% of the US's companies that produce raw materials. Raw copper, I think, which is a main material in processors, like you said.
Quickly, silicon.
Second most? Okay, it was close. Rowan said that the number of juniors is going to decrease as the number of seniors is going to increase in China. And that is true, but the highest percentage of people is viable to have children, and China it has either canceled or is going to cancel their one-child policy.
And Chinese students. They are not planning on canceling the one-child policy currently. They are looking at it for the future, but that's really only in the distant future if they really need to, because it's actually causing some environmental problems. But that's a side point.
Because if they're thinking about canceling the one-child policy, that's going to increase the amount of raw materials they need to use, increasing the pollution and decreasing the quality of life for the people there. Rivers and air is already polluted, and it's causing problems for the people. Like smog clouds in cities, making it hard for people to breathe is a problem. And using more materials is only going to increase that.
Also, one of the points that we had is that once we are not manufacturing many things in America, while China is, that depends on a lot of oil. Oil is not a renewable resource. Oil can run out. So what are you going to do once oil runs out? And coal.
Well, let's say we run out of oil and China stops manufacturing, then what are you going to use? Because almost 80-90% of the stuff that are used in America, even the desks we're sitting on, are made in China.
Okay, well, first of all, we can always use clean energy, but second of all, an important point to point out is that we're still going to have an industry because we can use new resources that we're going to invent because we have the best ideas. Whereas China, not only are they not going to have any industry anymore because their industry is going to be gone, they're not going to have any ideas to create new industry.
Even if you have an idea, you don't have people to produce it.
Well, we'll have the energy.
However, we're developing the National Ignition Facility in which they're actually trying to achieve
Okay.
You have to let them answer. You can't pelt them with 100 questions. Let them.
So, renewable resources like wind and solar and water, they all take up more space than oil does. So, and China and India are both much larger, or a good amount larger than the U.S.
And also the United States is in debt. How are they going to pay for all this? And also how are they going to get out of this debt? Because they can't stay a single provider for very long if they're in this much debt.
Well, actually, we are currently developing and almost finished developing the National Ignition Facility, which is trying to achieve nuclear fusion to create a star on Earth. So obviously there would be a lot more limitless energy here than there would be, and we could simply use hydrogen pellets.
nuclear fusion could possibly destroy the world. So if that were to happen, your argument is invalid.
No, not necessarily.
It
I
also
mean,
didn't
they
explain
managed.
how they pay for that. If they're already in so much debt, and how they're going to get out of this debt.
Well, first of all, it's already paid for. Second of all, as with dangers of that, well, I know physicists are taking this into account. And for now, the current development is to achieve one that can last for a few nanoseconds, which can still produce massive amounts of energy either way. And possibly eventually later develop weapons with it that can be controlled.
I'll let you go.
So, say theoretical situation, oil is running out. Okay. So, you're saying that China could quickly get clean energy to do their manufacturing. However, in the research that I did, China is not doing much research on clean energy right now, while as Megan said, the US is doing a lot of research on clean energy, so we would be able to pick that up quicker.
Without China making all of the United States' resources, the United States would not have any resources. So the United States would either have to give clean energy to China, or they would have to start all over and have to find a new way to find it.
Everyone has room. Even though clean energy seems harder to achieve, the amount of pollution that is being produced in China is reducing quality of life significantly, and also just creating a harder environment to live in, where people are just going to develop more and more problems.
Nope. Nope. Rest of the team. Someone react.
Well, I know that renewable energy is very expensive, and how could the U.S. pay for that during the day?
Okay, so I have a question about you saying that the United States is in debt. Okay, we are in debt, and I know that's a problem. But we're trying to become out of debt, and we're working on that by setting up plans. We're going to, this year, we're going to set up a plan about our national debt. Congress is meeting to try to fix the problem. And if we were able to produce the supernova, we could use the energy and sell it to other countries once oil runs out. So then we would be making money, or we would be settling our debt with China because they wouldn't have the energy either, so they'd kind of be having the problem.
If you haven't noticed, Congress say that we do not make the supernova, we just wasted a ton of money.
Actually, it's the...
Okay, we just wasted a ton more money, and we made nothing, and now we're in a lot more debt.
Time.
All the time, we're really inefficient in our politics in getting anything solved. So the idea that the Congress is just going to meet and solve this massive debt that we have is really far out there.
And off of stuff that could happen, like if they can get this star to work, or if the plan to get out of debt goes how they want it. So let's look at like what we do know. The United States is in debt, and that's affecting how they do things right now.
So you guys talk a lot about how the U.S. is a lot more innovative and stuff, but actually the only thing, like for example the iPhone, the U.S. owns the design of the iPhone, but like the chip inside was made in like South Korea and then it's produced in China. And also things like the electrical car weren't made, like created in the U.S., they're actually created in Germany. So
the thing is, the technology that America is so proud of is not actually created in America. They just design it, and the technology needed is made in other countries.
1 minute. 1 minute left. 1 minute left. Go.
China is sort of infamous for taking ideas from the U.S. And like they've been doing for watches, and they could do the same for phones. I remember my account on Gmail was hacked by China, so why can't they do that for Apple?
Also, in Japan, they're making a lot more new innovations on like just as many as in the United States.
Also, for TVs, who in here uses an American TV?
10 seconds.
Huh?
Everyone.
10 seconds.
Sony, Panasonic, they're all Japanese.
Time.
So first of all, you just mentioned Japan randomly. Okay, we never talked about Japan at all. So we're gonna go back to China and America for a little bit. So you continue to say that like America, like they're producing their products in China. But the thing is, China still needs American products. America, okay, as much as you want to say that, well, America's reliant on China, China is reliant on America also. And America still has innovation, education, quality of life, capitalism, and immigration, which are all key and important factors, which will help them in the future. Whereas China has a lot of problems with money, wage of workers, military, communism, poor quality of life, and pollution. So how are you going to deal with all those problems? Okay?
The United States has maintained its most powerful seat in innovation and education throughout its entire lifespan as a country, and countries from all over the world always come to the United States to look for the best education. And you guys keep making the point that we have absolutely no industrial capability at all, which is not true. We were the first, and we still are a very capable industrial nation. And those three companies I mentioned earlier, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, and Raytheon, who are all leaders in technological fields, produce in the United States. And just because you have the iPhone, which you produce, and again, we innovated, doesn't mean you manufacture everything that exists.
30 seconds.
And I mean, we're also always a bit 2 steps ahead in innovation because, yes, China does have land-based jammers that can destroy our radars. However, we have other systems that can negate those signals and therefore destroy their radars in their attempt to destroy ours.
5 seconds.
Okay, so like you guys said, innovation